Hello, everyone. We are about to begin. So, if you could just limit your conversations, I'm so excited to be with you today. And I'm excited to have the panelists of Ivan Shifrin, the Executive Director of Cybersecurity Services for Comcast Business, and a guy that we kind of know a little bit that's been around the block, the Honorable Rick Snyder, who is the Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of SIN-SCI, who is also our former governor of the state of Michigan. Kick this off with questions for Governor Snyder. As someone who's worked in the large and small companies, what do you see as the difference between large companies versus small and medium-sized companies when it comes to cybersecurity and protecting your business?
Yeah, well, thanks, Brenda, and thanks for moderating, and thanks to Comcast for having me on the panel. It's great to be here. The difference between large and small is vast in the cybersecurity world. If you think about it, there is a giant cybersecurity industry out there. You've heard many of those names: Palo Alto, CrowdStrike, all those big organizations. They're really geared to help large organizations, enterprises, like the state of Michigan, Ford, GM, big companies. And once you leave that tier, though, there's about 6 million plus small and medium-sized organizations. The companies with 200 people, the people with 50 people, 100 people. And that's a different world. That's actually why we created Sensei, was to serve those folk, because that traditional industry does enterprise, and they have trouble figuring out how to even serve small and medium-sized. So we specialize in that. And when you get to that level, it's much more personal. It's much more hands-on. It's much more about people and culture. If you look at the average hack that's still taking place, about 80 to 90% of those involve a human. So it's just not about technology. And so our goal is to help create an active culture in those organizations. And the funny part is cyber is scary to most people, particularly if you're in a small organization. I tell people, they think we're from like Mars. If you start speaking cyber.
Yeah.
So the funny part in our setup, I'm actually identified as the anti-acronym police.
Okay.
So we don't use acronyms. We actually we try to talk in plain language that the average person can understand why it's important to do these things to be safer in the cyber world. So two dramatically different worlds: enterprise and small to medium organizations. They actually don't overlap much, but we need to spend a lot more time helping this segment down here.
I think I'm going to end up in the acronym jail today.
Acronym jails. I also want to recognize our sponsor for today, and that's Comcast. Let's give Comcast a round of applause for everything they do for us every day. And so now I'm going to ask Ivan you a question. What are the most significant emerging threats in cybersecurity that organizations should be aware of today in 2025?
Thanks. That's a great question, Brenda. What we call the cybersecurity attack surface is growing dramatically every day. And what that means is all the places that the bad guys, our adversaries, can get inside our networks and steal our data. So let me give you some example. And in general, complexity is the enemy of cybersecurity. And things in our world have become very complex these days. There are now, as one example, there are now more than twice as many computers and machines on the planet as there are people. So the attack surface not only includes people, but it includes all these machines. For example, the Internet of Things, devices in your home, devices and cameras in your business. And we see not very good security built into many of these devices. They're unmanaged, they're sitting out there, they're not reporting back. And just this week, or last week, we had the largest, just what's called acronym police, don't hurt me, distributed denial of service attack. This is a storm of malformed network communications from compromised Internet of Things and devices out there. About 15 or 20,000 of these generated a storm of 5 terabytes a second and took down businesses across the country and the world. So that's a business availability issue, a business continuity issue. Another big trend, my team does the annual Comcast Cybersecurity Threat Report, is people. People are the weakest link. As the governor pointed out, it's not just technology. It's people, process, and technology. And the most common way, well over 9 out of 10 data breaches start with phishing. And in the last year, we have seen a wellspring of new types of phishing attacks using generative AI. And they are much harder for people to detect and much harder for machines to detect. And so it has become almost trivial for the bad guys to get inside our networks and land and start to expand, which is where companies like Comcast can help small businesses and companies like the governor's.
So everyone is here today with their small business with the concern about what do I need to do to protect my organization. So this question is for both of you. Name the top things that you would tell these small business owners or business owners they should take and do to protect their business.
Yeah, number one on my list is you need to create an active culture for cybersecurity in your organization. It's a cultural issue, bottom line, if you look at it. And again, if you look at most organizations, cybersecurity is never going to be their top priority unless you get hacked. You hope it's never your top priority, but it has to be a priority. You cannot ignore it. In 2 ways in particular, and I appreciate Ivan's comment about phishing in particular. We do cyber awareness training for our clients. So we have the employees of our clients review short videos. They're fun. They have several questions. And then the intervening months, we do 6 of those a year. Intervening months, we actually do phishing exercises where we'll send a phishing email to a company and see who clicks on it. And I can tell you, you might find this entertaining. The number one we've seen is we sent an email out saying, this was from HR, supposedly senior management, but we sent it to everyone saying, see the attached file for all the executive compensation in the company. That was the number one that people wanted to open to see what was going on. So a lot of it is creating that culture, and it involves doing training and awareness. And so what I tell you is, going to those email illustrations, everyone needs to build a little time circuit lag in what you do. To spend that extra 2 or 3 seconds. It doesn't require a lot of time to say something doesn't feel right, something doesn't look right. Hover over the address at the top, see where it's really coming from. If it's urgent and involves money and it's Friday afternoon, look out. If it involves gift cards, look out. So there's a whole bunch of these things to get this active culture going. The other thing I really encourage as part of that, along with what you're doing for employees, is to get the senior people involved, executive briefings, and you need leadership and ownership by people in the top that will be doing this stuff if it's really going to take on. And the classic story is I'll do executive briefings and they'll ask me to do it rather than my colleagues because I'm the one that gets to tell the CEO, you're dogging it on your training. You need to pick it up, and you need to be a role model for doing your training rather than just saying you're too busy. So it's that active culture is the number one item.
Couldn't agree more, Governor. Cybersecurity starts at the top down, not at the bottom up with the IT team alone. It is a team sport, and the whole company needs to be involved, or you will potentially suffer the consequences. Here are the top 4 or 5 things that I would recommend. First and foremost, back up your data, back up your crown jewel information, and practice restoring it with an incident response plan that involves everybody in the company. your general counsel, outside or inside, your public relations, your employees, the business owners, business leaders, and of course your IT and security staff if you have one. You've got to practice that at least once a year, because in a crisis, nobody remembers what to do. Secondly, have good network security, and here I'm going to the technical side, and endpoint protection. These can stop a lot of pain points, and if you don't have the staff, most organizations don't have the staff to do that themselves, you can partner with a managed security service provider to do it for you, and it's very affordable. Why is that important? It's not a question of if somebody's going to get in. It really is a question of when, given what we just said about phishing and the importance of phishing awareness, right? That means you have to have somebody with eyes on glass, or machine eyes on glass, 24 hours a day, 365 days a week. The bad guys don't go home after 5 o'clock. They're there nights and weekends from all over the world. So it's affordable these days to hire a third-party firm like Comcast to monitor your entire IT environment, your cloud systems, your applications, your databases, your network, your endpoints, and so on. Because bad things will happen if you're not there to contain and disrupt the attacks before they actually steal data. Second, on your password and security controls and logging in, there's a technology called multi-factor authentication. I promise not to use too many acronyms, but don't know what else to call it, where you use not just a password, but your phone, using Face ID as a second factor. So even if the criminals or nation states steal your password, you have that physical backup. Critical to implement that. So there's just a handful of the 3 or 4 security controls that everybody needs to be doing.
Yeah, I would just reinforce one that Ivan mentioned is there's a lot that he mentioned on detection and prevention, like endpoint protection and stuff like that. But one that's overlooked way too often is to have an incident response plan. We actually are doing a state of cybersecurity for small and medium-sized companies that's going to be coming out soon. And only about a third of organizations have an incident response plan. So that means if you have a problem, who do you call first? Who do you call second? Where do you have those backups? How do you restore them? All these things. And the difference in your business is, on average, the national stat for on average, if you don't have an incident response plan, you'll be down 22 days. If you have an incident response plan, you can quite often be back up in 24, 48, 72 hours. Think about your business. Just ask yourself in your business or your organization, if I'm down for 3 weeks, what does that mean to me? What does it mean to keeping people working in our company?
Usually for me, it means things work better when I'm gone, but not with most businesses.
So we are in the great year of 2025, and we know that there are leaps and bounds in that industry that want to take you down in cyber networks. So for each of you to wrap up our thoughts, thinking about 2025, you're looking in your crystal ball, what are the top priorities for cybersecurity?
Yeah, 2 or 3 things that will be taking place. First of all, artificial intelligence. Ivan mentioned this. It's an arms race. All those phishing email that we used to get that were broken English, that had poor grammar, they're all gone. They're actually highly sophisticated now, and it doesn't take them any more work. Actually, it's less work for them to do than trying to even write one. So AI is going to continue, but the thing is, we're using AI now on our side. So there's like an escalating arms race of AI. One of the other big trends that is really taking place is supply chain. Quite often these enterprises have a lot of things in place and they're still getting hacked. But if their most likely way to get hacked in the future is actually through the smaller companies that are their suppliers. So we're doing a lot now to talk to supply chain people in those organizations about how to help them be safer so the whole ecosystem is safer. And the last thing I would say, and hopefully it will happen, is we just need to start prioritizing cybersecurity. One of the things we'll see in our report about 2024, we give like a credit score on companies on their cyber health. We've done hundreds of these. So this is a valid number for the United States as a whole. Only 6% of organizations are in the safer area. 94% are in the poor area. And we do need to start getting more active, more involved, and understanding we can't just ignore this. And people think if you're a small fish, you're a safe fish. In fact, the bad guys actually like to eat small fish better. It's less indigestion and less work.
Yeah,
Thank you.
the challenge really is cybersecurity is a team sport. Everybody in your organization should be aware and involved. And if it's left to the IT team alone, you will not be successful. It's got to come from the top down as a board level initiative and from your leadership teams. Some of the big trends we see coming this year are a little bit scary. We see things like weaponization of physical devices such as robotics, IoT I mentioned, and even satellite systems and drones. Physical weaponization, although hopefully that won't affect too many of our local communities here. It is a big trend. We see quantum computing, which is a fancy word for the next generation of computing that's not quite here, but it's coming very fast along with the AI trend. And the Chinese proved about 2 months ago they can break all our encryption algorithms, or the most commonly used encryption algorithms, such as, well, I'm going to stay out of the alphabet soup there. But that's a very scary trend, and we have to be very forward-thinking as a critical infrastructure provider at Comcast about what we call post-quantum cryptography. And then beyond that, we have to, as I think Governor Snyder said, make this a top-down initiative, educate your employees, and buy in 100%. It's not just the big companies. It's everybody in the room here today has a role to play in countering our mutual adversaries in cybersecurity.
So this is kind of a unique question. What is the desired appetite for cyber attacks? Do you see a trend that they go after certain items? And you mentioned phishing, which is very important for us to understand. But if you are like in the food industry or you're in the retail industry, is there a certain appetite for these attacks?
Yeah, there is. But there's more than one category. There's several categories, but I'll mention two. One are the economic bad guys, the people after money. And so if you look at the simple one, they're after money. But data is also money. So they'll try to divert your dollars, they'll get your bank accounts, your wire transfers, they'll work on all those kind of things. It covers the board. But they'll also try to get your personally identifiable information, credit card information, even healthcare information, and sell that. There is a monetized market for that. And the thing to remember with these guys, what really helped enable it was Bitcoin, because that was their mechanism to get paid then. So these are very, very bad people, but never underestimate them. They are smart people, and they're in places where we typically can't get at them. They're in countries where we can't get them. And now to the point where they literally run ads recruiting hackers. And in these ads, they'll talk about how they have employee benefit plans for hackers. It has gotten that sophisticated. So that's one huge category. The second one, which most of you won't have to face, but it's a huge national security issue for us, and it's great to have Ivan here in particular, because he would know this better than I, are nation states. Actually conducting either directly or through proxies, conducting espionage, trying to mess up our infrastructure in our country, everything else. That's going to be a growing threat.
Yeah, just to reemphasize what you just said, Governor, nation states don't just target government organizations. They will go after anybody, including small business. I've seen it time and time again. And I'm talking about companies that are no bigger than 20 people. So don't think just because you're small, they're going to ignore you. And in many ways, the problems that small or medium-sized business face are identical to the ones that large corporations face. So you need help in addressing them. And that's where it first starts.
So our last question, we have 2 minutes left. I will take one question from the audience. Anyone has a burning question? That's interesting. So I'll ask my question. So when we look at these small businesses, and you talked about a time frame that you could be down for X amount of days based on a cybersecurity, what kind of determines if they attack your money, that's a longer time you'll be down, or if they attack your mailing list, that's a different. What determines how long you would be down after an attack?
Yeah, a lot of it depends on, do you have that plan or not? And do you know where your backups are, and you know how to restore things? That's why it's so critically important. I always like when people sort of give me that blank stare about an incident response plan, I walk them through the basics. I say, in your business, do you have a fire evacuation plan? Yes. In Michigan, do you have a tornado shelter plan? Yes. Do you have an incident response plan? Huh. And then I like to ask them the question, of those 3 items, what's the most likely to happen? By far, it's the cyber attack. So it's like, again, that's that cultural issue. We just need to build this stuff in our culture, and that's why we even encourage people to still get insurance. Any client of ours, we still recommend they get cyber insurance, but that's a crazy market in its own right. But you want to have a layered protection scheme, starting with detection, prevention, response, recovery, all those steps, because no one is safe. Particularly with nation states, they can hack anyone. You can be safer, and that's what I tell people. Our goal is to make people safer so you can sleep better at night.
Yeah, that's really the goal. Make it just hard enough that they will skip your organization and move on to the next one, right? It's risk management at the end of the day.